In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu received U.S. President Joe Biden in Tel Aviv hours after the bombing on Al-Ali Baptist Hospital causing the death of hundreds of Palestinians. In China, the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation opened with the presence of several world leaders. In Chile, the 19th edition of the Pan American Games began with the baseball match between Mexico and Chile. Mexico won a resounding victory, 16 runs to 0. The opening ceremony is scheduled for October 20th. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed U.S. President Joe Biden in Tel Aviv hours after the bombing on Al-Ali Baptist Hospital causing the death of hundreds of Palestinians. The visit supports the indiscriminate attacks against civilians by Israel against the Palestinian region of Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu expressed his gratitude to the U.S. President for his visit and said that this demonstrates his deep commitment to Israel, to the future of the Jewish people, and to the Jewish state. Meanwhile, Biden told his Israeli counterpart that the U.S. will guarantee that Israel has everything it needs to defend itself.
We will continue to have Israel's back as you work to defend your people. We'll continue to work with you and partners across the region to prevent more tragedy to innocent civilians.
Meanwhile, on Wednesday, Israeli forces bombed a bakery, which was a shelter for Palestinian refugees. The place is located in Nuseirat camp, southern Gaza City. Tel Aviv's regime has not stopped its attacks on the Palestinian population, despite the international community's rejection following the attack on Baptist Hospital. The United Nations registered at least 6 people killed when a school run by the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency in central Gaza Strip was hit in Israeli airstrikes. Authorities also report dozens wounded, most of them children. The school has served as a shelter for some 4,000 displaced people since Israel's bombardments against Gaza began over a week ago. An estimated 1 million people have been displaced across the Gaza Strip. That's nearly half of its estimated total population of 2.3 million. The Palestinian Health Ministry reported that the total number of fatalities in Gaza has reached at least 3,000.
A third of the casualties and martyrs that we have received are children. We have more than 60 children in the hospital who are displaced. There are bombings and targets around the hospital area that bring despair into the heart of these children.
The doctors took us outside to the courtyard of the hospital because there were not empty beds inside to accommodate this large number of injured people. And here we are, as you see, outside.
Organizations, groups, and leaders from all over the world condemned the violent acts and the massacre perpetrated against the Al-Ali Arab Baptist Hospital by the Israeli army. The World Health Organization condemned the act, calling for immediate protection of civilians and adequate health care. Meanwhile, countries such as Venezuela, Cuba, and Chile described the massacre as an inhumane and unjustifiable act and urgently demanded an immediate ceasefire and an immediate end to the flagrant violations of international humanitarian law. Similarly, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, stated that attacking a hospital where women, children, and innocent civilians are receiving treatment is just a sign of the lack of the most basic human values. The action was also condemned by the French President Emmanuel Macron and the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. In this context, around 5,000 Jordanians gathered outside the Israeli embassy in Amman on Wednesday to protest the death of hundreds of people in a strike on a Gaza hospital. Security forces blocked off roads leading to the embassy, but the size of the demonstration looked set to swell amid a wave of anger in Jordan, home to many Palestinian refugees. The Jordanian government said Israel bears full responsibility for this grave incident. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also condemned the attack on a hospital in the northern Gaza Strip, which left hundreds injured and dead.
by the hundreds of people killed at Al-Ahli hospital this same day in Gaza by a strike that I strongly condemned earlier today. I call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to provide sufficient time and space to help realize my two appeals and to ease the epic human suffering we are witnessing. Too many lives and the fate of the entire region hang on the balance.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi hosted German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Cairo on Wednesday for a meeting to debate the situation in Israel and Palestine. Al-Sisi warned that a mass exodus of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Egypt could be the initial stage of a similar displacement from the West Bank to Jordan, which would make the establishment of a Palestinian state impossible. The president also announced that hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid for the inhabitants of Gaza are currently stuck in the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula due to Israeli bombardments. In the same context, the German Chancellor declared that both countries are working hard to have humanitarian aid delivered as soon as possible. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Wednesday, the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation opened in China with the presence of several world leaders. At the opening of the forum, Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered a speech in which he stressed that the initiative was born with the aspiration to promote connectivity in politics, infrastructure, trade, and people-to-people financing with all countries so as to inject new impetus into the world economy, create new opportunities for general development, and build a new platform for international economic cooperation. In this context, representatives from more than 130 countries, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, attended the meeting, which marked the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative for International Cooperation, an initiative that has generated more than $2 trillion in contracts around the world.
It is important that we have a specific agreement between Russia and China about parallel and coordinated development of the EAEU and the BRI. We also have a non-preferential agreement about trade and economic cooperation between the EAEU member states and the PRC. To unite efforts to implement this agreement, we have established a joint commission. In February of this year, a detailed roadmap was adopted that in particular includes establishing interaction between Eurasian Union and China in trade policy and transport corridors digitalization. I'll point out that integration agenda, in the widest meaning, is an integral part of Russian national development strategy and strengthening our economic, technological and financial sovereignty.
President Xi Jinping is willing to strengthen the Belt and Road Initiative project and other programs for the sake of a global economy based on multilateral relations.
Third, carrying out practical cooperation. China will promote both signature projects and small yet smart livelihood programs. The China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank of China will each set up a 350 billion yuan financing window. An additional 80 billion yuan will be injected into the Silk Road Fund. Together, they will support BRI projects on the basis of market and business operation. Cooperation agreements worth $97.2 billion have been concluded at the CEO conference held during this forum. China will also carry out 1,000 small-scale livelihood assistance projects.
In this context, the presidents of China and Russia, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, met on Wednesday at the end of the opening of the third forum of the New Silk Road. Both heads of state committed to the preservation of international justice. Beijing seeks to cooperate with Moscow to defend international justice, Xi Jinping stated at a meeting with his Russian counterpart on Wednesday. During the meeting, the leaders also highlighted the strength of binational cooperation and trade exchanges, which will exceed $200 billion by the end of the current year. For his part, the Russian leader shared with China the desire for fair and mutually beneficial cooperation to achieve stable and lasting universal progress and social well-being while respecting civilized diversity and the right of each state to its own model of development. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez held a bilateral meeting on Wednesday with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, where they reaffirmed the continuity of the joint work on the Belt and Silk Road. At the meeting, the Chinese leader highlighted the strategic relationship between the two countries forged during the 4 years of the presidency of Alberto Fernandez, whom he thanked for the support and strengthening of the relationship. In this context, Xi Jinping stated that his country will continue to encourage investment by Chinese companies in Argentina, in addition to promoting imports of Argentine products. Last year, China was Argentina's second largest trading partner, with a total trade of $25.43 billion, being the second destination of national exports and the main source of Argentine imports. And during his speech at the opening ceremony on Wednesday, Argentine President stated that the Belt and Road Initiative is a boost to regional cooperation mechanisms and is conducive to promoting relations among countries around the world.
Presently, hegemony is decaying and regional frictions are ceaseless. In this context, the BRI, with the concept of co-building, has become a promising global cooperative initiative. For us, supporters of multilateralism, the BRI is a mechanism promoting relations among countries. It does not compete with existing regional cooperation mechanisms, but dovetail them by tapping their respective advantages. We also appreciate the Chinese government for supporting us to join the BRICS cooperation mechanism. The countries covered by the mechanism all advocate rejecting hegemony, respecting multilateralism, and rethinking international relations on this basis.
Let's briefly review what this forum is all about.
The Belt and Road Forum represents a concept proposed in 2013 by Chinese President Xi Jinping. It promotes global interconnectivity in the areas of economy, trade, infrastructure, and also in the human and cultural fields. Over the past decade, over 150 countries and more than 30 international organizations have signed documents within the Belt and Road Initiative framework. So far, representatives of over 140 countries and 30-plus international organizations, including state leaders, heads of international organizations, ministerial officials, and representatives of the business sector, academia, and non-governmental organizations, have confirmed they will attend the event. Apart from the opening ceremony of the third BRF, 3 high-level forums will be held simultaneously for in-depth discussions on connectivity, green development, and the digital economy. Additionally, 6 thematic forums will be conducted in parallel under the topics of trade, connectivity, people-to-people bonds, think-tank exchanges, clean Silk Road, subnational cooperation, and maritime cooperation. The forum is the most important diplomatic event hosted by China so far this year, and the most significant celebration for the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Found short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Argentina entered the final stage of the campaign for the presidential elections to be held this Sunday. This Tuesday, Argentina's Minister of Economy and presidential candidate Sergio Massa held a massive rally in Buenos Aires province on Peronist Loyalty Day. Massa intends to maintain the officialist union for the homeland heading the executive in spite of the inflationary crisis. The minister is convinced that the worst is over, and if he wins, he will renegotiate the agreement with the International Monetary Fund to free himself from policies of the financial entity that is forcing the country into recession to pay the $44 billion debt contracted by the government of the liberal Mauricio Macri. The Peronist leader's main opponents are the right-wing populist Javier Milei and the main opposition coalition, United for Change.
Tell them that on December 10th, a government begins with a president who has the courage to make the changes that are required, who has the determinations to face the reconstruction of Argentina. Tell them that the worst is getting over, that what is coming is much better, and that we have to do it together.
Ecuador's President-elect Daniel Noboa has asked the outgoing President Guillermo Lasso to convene an emergency security council to assess the real situation in the country. This Tuesday, both spoke at the Carondelet Palace, where together with their teams, they coordinated the start of the government transition process. Noboa announced on his social media that he had already requested a meeting with the public security authorities, as well as a report on the actions of the intelligence services, the armed forces, and the national police. The objective is to begin to restore peace to Ecuadorian families, said the president-elect. In Chile, the 19th edition of the Pan American Games begins on October 18th, ahead of the opening ceremony on October 20th. This is the top continental event for national Olympic committees in North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. Paris 2024 Olympic qualification quotas are also available in 13 sports. The first sport to see action this Wednesday was baseball, with the opening match between host Chile and Mexico. The Santiago 2023 mascot is named Few. It is a bird inspired by the Roche tyrant, which has 7 colors and is indigenous to South America. The games are held under the motto Soñar, Jugar, Ganar, Spanish for dream, play, win. Let's hear now from Eduardo Regonesi, who is in Chile for the latest on the first day of action in the 19th edition of the Pan American Games.
Good evening, how are you doing? We are standing right outside the baseball stadium in Santiago, Chile, a stadium that was built precisely for this, to kickstart the 2023 Santiago Pan American Games. Chile just played Mexico in baseball, and it was a Mexico win for 16-0. It's an expected result, since Mexico is one of the top teams in these Pan American Games. Mexico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and Venezuela are probably the 4 strongest teams. And Chile, well, Chile, they're making their debut here, their first time to be in a Pan American Games. So it's expected for them to lose against tougher teams like Mexico. We will be covering baseball, of course, today, tomorrow, and Friday. But tomorrow we will also be covering boxing that's going to be happening at the National Stadium. And from then on, we're going to be covering all the sports for you guys. We're going to be moving from one place in the city to another, bringing you full coverage of the Pan American Games Santiago 2023, including Friday night, the big inauguration. It promises to be a show like no other has been seen in Santiago. That's what the authorities say, at least, that no show has ever been as big, as huge as what we are going to see Friday night. So we are very excited to bring you guys all the footage of that, and we will be covering, as we said, all the sports and everything that can happen around the stadium. We'll be here for you to bring you the latest news right from Santiago.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSURenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.